Welcome back to another edition of the Raiderland podcast. I'm Ryan Hyatt. He's David Collier from KMAX Red Raider Nation. You guys probably already knew that. I just feel the need to introduce ourselves here in week 2.
When you can't see the beard, you're not quite sure who you might be talking to, right?
Absolutely. One of us could be Cliff Kingsbury. You just don't know. But in fact, we're not. The Monday presser today was, I thought it was actually more upbeat than maybe I was expecting going in. And I'm okay with that. It wasn't a frustrated Cliff Kingsbury. It was just, to me, the same Cliff Kingsbury who's had to stand there multiple times now in his coaching career at Texas Tech and answer the same questions about how you put up 50 points and lose a football game. It's almost down to rote.
And yeah, exactly. We went into this situation, and I was kind of weary of it because, it was going to be a tough situation for him. But like you mentioned there, he's been through this press conference before. It's almost like he knows the answers to these questions because it unfortunately has happened too often here in the last couple of years. He said, before him as well.
He said what you'd expect. I believe in these guys talking about the defense. I believe in, Coach, I believe in the process. Somebody, asked a question and basically, he said, I don't think it's broke talking about the defense, but we got to fix some things. Well, all right, well, that tells me that something's broke. I don't know how much better this defense can get between now and Big 12 play, certainly, maybe now and the end of the year.
Yeah,
I don't know where the massive improvement comes from.
Yeah, unless it's just snaps and minutes played for some of those younger guys and guys trying to gel with what was already here in the first place. We mentioned it last week during the podcast, how the linebackers would handle a situation against a team like that. And I think, we saw them run the Wildcat or whatever they called it there, the Wild Devil, and I think we'll probably see that quite a bit from each and every other.
Isn't kind of redundant, Wild Devil?
Wild Devil,
It just say Devil, or
yeah,
Wild.
The Devil, yeah.
They sent out Luke Stice to face the media today. The fullback tight end converted into a linebacker. I always say allow the $500,000 assistant and Coach Gibbs to talk to the media, but instead the student athlete had to face the questioning. They talked about that Wildcat formation, and he more or less said it without saying it, that I think his words were, we weren't taken off guard, but they hadn't shown that a whole lot before. Gave me the feeling that they might not have had a lot of packages in completely ready to go for that Wildcat formation, and that there was some assignment technique issues that were problematic for the Red Raiders.
So that might be interesting to see if that's something that Louisiana Tech does this week against them, because we always hear coaches preach the biggest improvement is from week 1 to week 2.
Oh, Lord.
Maybe what I'm going to say with that is maybe that first week doesn't really count in this situation. You go
maybe this
from
is
week
really
2
week
to
2.
week coming up against Louisiana.
I'll buy that.
So,
I think that's a fair analysis.
So we see if there is some improvement, especially against a Wildcat type offense, and it should be interesting against Louisiana Tech because in their first game against Arkansas, they lost 21-20, but their backup quarterback was actually playing in that game because their starter Ryan Higgins, I believe, was suspended for a week for off the field issues. We'll just say. So they had a guy that he didn't really run that much, but he did have a rushing touchdown. It should be interesting to see if we see him running the ball against the Red Raiders more so than we'll see them. They did throw for more than 400 yards this past weekend as well.
I'd run against Tech until they prove you can't
with anybody and everybody.
Yeah, I don't care what your offense is. I would absolutely run against the Red Raiders. Right. I want to go back to Batson and Giles, or Jatson and Biles, as I referred to them at one point Saturday night. It got late. Maybe it was early Sunday. We're seeing the emergence of Batson. I really like what he's doing. I think we really knew Giles would be good. Aaron Moore's talked about on the local media day. He thought he would be the emergent receiver. But, man, Batson's giving you some stuff right now.
Yeah, and he's that, I guess, security blanket. He's the guy that you can lean on. And you want more of those guys, I think, at this point. And it's funny to say that. You mentioned 55 points, but it just seems like it wasn't enough, and I think you're going to need more from the offense. As dumb as that sounds, it just sounds so dumb to say you need more from the offense. And that's the scary thing is whether they say it or not, Patrick mentioned it in Monday's presser, I think we can score on every single possession. And you can't score on every single.
But you can't.
You can't.
You won't.
And then when you don't on one, whether you think so or not, you're going to press on the next one. At least that's the mindset that I have, and it starts to snowball at that point.
I'll go back to the receivers. 5 combined catches between Cantrell and Sadler. Those are some guys, I think, going into the season that if I told you 2 games in they would have combined for 5, you'd be kind of surprised on that number. And we had a lot of different guys catching passes, but I just found it interesting.
Well, and I can see Sadler's numbers dropping off just
up.
because of Giles. I mean, Giles is kind of taking
the
some
emergence of those guys are covering up those guys.
What did you think about special teams in this game? And I know that there's issues where if they kick it through the end zone, and I'm just talking about returns specifically. There were a couple of times whenever Arizona State punted inside the 5-yard line and it rolled inside the 2. I mean, those are situations where you can't return that ball. You're taught not to return that ball. But to think about how many times there were kickoffs by Arizona State and how many, I know there weren't a lot of punts, but Texas Tech had 0 return yards in this game, and that's just putting yourself in the hole right there. Yeah, especially with the balls being flying through the air.
Didn't help. It was. I'm going to chalk this one up to some situational things on some of the return yards. I still like Batson as a punt returner a whole lot. I think you'll get better on the kickoffs and you get better on those return yards. But that was just one of those weird nights on that. And again, your punt returners, I wouldn't have fielded most of those punts.
Yeah, and
certainly I'm old, but I mean, those are punts that you just go, if you can stick it in there, more power to you.
More power to you,
But worse things are going to happen if I try to field some of those punts, I think, either on the move or in that field situation.
Well, I think from what I remember in that first half, he fielded 1, but they were on him. So it was, and I think it was after 2 had already been inside the 5, so they had enough of that.
Let's talk Oklahoma State a little bit in the Chippewas. Gundy handled it about as well as you can handle it. I think post-game in the immediate, after-action report, and then even in his statement, I feel their frustration. I don't think any rules need to be changed. They just need to be followed.
No, I think the outcry, and I don't know if it's just an outcry just to get clicks or, people listening to your podcast. If you want to listen to this one.
Yes, please listen to this one over and over.
Over and over again. Put it on a loop. It's to change the thing, that the play should have never happened because the game was officially over. And I just think that you can't do that for so many reasons just because of the history. And you can't grandfather all of these other people that feel like they were wronged by a referee at some point in a football game. And,
everybody is.
And everybody is. I bore you to death with, if there's an onside kick, I won't even say the game. If there's an onside kick with under a minute to go and the team kicking does not have any timeouts, and the team receiving it actually does recover it, but somewhere in the process the refs say the team that was kicking recovered it, then that team goes and scores. That's the same situation because the team that did recover the ball kneels and the clock's over. It's the same exact situation. So you can't do that for this game. It stinks for Oklahoma State, and I can be upset about it and they can be upset about it, but it can't change.
Yeah, well, I mean, specifically in this game, they should never have been in a position to lose. That's the real story, that they were getting beat at home by Central Michigan. I also go back to what I always say, that if you're in a position to lose on a last play, you haven't done enough to win the game for 60 minutes.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And one thing I have a question about, the 2 rules that I know of that are a loss of down on the offensive side of the ball, at least in the NFL anyway, are intentional grounding or illegal forward pass. Yeah. Those seem like, if you want to change anything, change those plays to plays where there's an untimed down, because you want to talk about 2 plays that kind of go against, Well,
what a way to end the game. Then
I know.
If you can't get that untimed down, then why not, with 3, however many seconds left on 4th down, just throw an intentional grounding, game over.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why you change it the other way, so it is an untimed down, so people don't do the intentional grounding. Or even this, you're running down the field and you're the quarterback and you get into open space and you see there's 2 more seconds and you're already past the line of scrimmage, just chuck the ball in the air.
Game over, you win. Can't do anything about it.
Change that and make those untimed downs. That fixes the problem.
All of this goes back to me, and this is why I hate replay, and it all goes back to this. All during that game, coaches made brutal mistakes. They called bad plays. They had the wrong package in there. They didn't get the play in quick enough. All during that game, coaches made mistakes. Players made mistakes. There was not a perfect play out there executed by either team at any time, because they're humans, and humans make mistakes. Fans do stupid stuff in the stands. They're humans. Guess what? The officials are humans too. I can live with them making mistakes. We correct what we can, but I can live with it, because when everything else is perfect, then you can tell me, okay, the officiating's got to be perfect. I think they do as good as they can, as well as they can, for the most part. I can live with the outcome.
Mistakes are part of the game. Bob Knight said it all the time, that basketball is a game of mistakes.
Right.
In this case, a mistake actually led to a win. Central Michigan's Corey Willis, the guy that received the lateral in the postgame, said that he ran the wrong route. He happened to be in the wrong place at the right time.
All right, what else you got today for the old podcast?
I think that's about it. It wasn't a very eventful Big 12 schedule, especially if you're a big fan of the Big 12. They managed to lose 5 of the 9 games, so I don't know if we want to spend much time talking about Arkansas and TCU. Unfortunate ending for a ranked team. 2 Big 12 teams that were ranked now out of the top 25. Not looking good for the conference that wants to add teams.
Hey, Big 12 ADs, maybe you should concentrate on making your football relevant again instead of trying to add a bunch of teams for a quick payday. Maybe you're worried about the wrong things.
There you go. Cincinnati is playing against Houston this week, so maybe that's a preview of a future Big 12 conference game right there for you.
God, I hope not. All right, you guys follow us at the Raiderland. Obviously, the site, you're already on it, theraiderland.com. You can follow us on Twitter. I am Ryan Hyatt Media, and he is Collier on TV. We've done all we can do.